Hello boys, girls, and people from other worlds, my name is Star-Punz. Yes, it is me trying to make a creepypasta out of Harry Potter Harry Yoda? I forgot what it was called. Harry Potter Sonic, some shit like that. It was so funny when I saw it as a kid. So I was like, you know what? Sure, I'll make a creepypasta out of it. So, I have another story for you. Another fan Sonic.EXE story I have made for all of you that I think you would all love for today. The challenge was that I was to make a Sonic.EXE story in under 24 hours. It's an okay story. So I hope you all enjoy this, in which now I have this story to tell of the Sonic with no blood. Our story starts with Zero, okay? Well, that's not actually their name. It's more of a John Doe, but you'll understand soon enough as to why their identity will remain a secret for this story. They go by the header of Sonato123JJ. It summarizes the entirety of their teenage years into an unbelievable title that, frankly, they were too lazy to ever change. So please just list the main character as Zero. They've always grasped a fascination with Sonic the Hedgehog as a series, for quite a reason. Something about seeing him resonated with Zero as wanting to branch off into being someone free, no longer becoming a passenger in their own life as wave after wave hits them. This is a story about the boy with no blood. Not Zero, however. This all started around 2 years ago. As mentioned before, they were an avid Sonic fan of all forms of his media, despite negative reception coined by all of their friends and just the internet in general. They still regarded these games as something to clutch onto for a time of comfort, which led into their obsession of wanting all forms of Sonic media. Anything. And the definition of the word, they were a hoarder. Their friends often saw this as an issue with the fascination of Sonic the Hedgehog, but at the end of every month, they would give some of these things away to children or schools. And they know growing up has to come eventually, so they gave it all away. And some of the more prized things onto listings in eBay. It was a step in their life that they thought would make their grandma proud, as they were living alone with them, and they didn't want to disappoint her anymore. So they needed to be an actual man for once, at least the one they tried to be. Just enough money to try and change that later. The number of hours spent dumpster diving and begging on eBay listings were all going out of their room as they tried to get ready for college. If anyone could try and convince them to stop them from doing this, they would feint them, but they really needed the money. As stated before, they were being housed by their grandmother. This story won't explain why. Situations are simply situations. A week passed of them shelving everything out into the eBay sphere, until they received a message listing the transaction of one of their prized possessions. One of the Sonic Adventure 2 Soap Shoes plushies. Gosh, those were so cool to them. So they had to hop on the opportunity as soon as they got the notice. But the person buying it off of them was wondering if they were interested in receiving a novelty of their own that this person has been wanting to give away for a while. The name of this man in this story is Tyler. An old, rigid man past his prime who was collecting for the sake of reliving something that was lost to him. So, naturally, Zero begins typing to them. Tyler asks, "Hello?" Zero responds, "Hello. You're interested in purchasing my plushie, is that correct?" Tyler then responds, "Yes, that is correct. I've been hoarding for a while for myself and have the payment already in transaction, but I was wondering why this was being listed at a lower price than normal." Zero responds, "Obviously, because auction goes out of control, And they're too scared to deal with any of that, so just shadow dropping it was enough for them to get over with. Besides, Zero can't convince people even if they tried. Tyler responds, I see. That's quite honest of you. Would you be interested in a Sonic novelty? It's a one-of-a-kind copy of Sonic's Virtual Learning. Well, it's not an actual game by Sega, it's a Mexican company produced ripoff to try and use Sonic as a teacher. Zero responds, so like Sonic's Schoolhouse? Tyler, a bit okay with this response. I guess the Spanish version. It's sort of like a virtual pet. I can send it in a USB drive considering you're losing out on some good money. I feel like this is something to compensate with. Zero thinks to themselves, what an odd thing to give someone on the internet, especially for free with eBay? They're trying to let go of other things, so this really won't help at all. Besides, they weren't really craving to say yes, but this was a test of their strength. Zero responds, I'm sorry, but no. Though I thank you for the offer. This was the last message before the toy was shipped off. And their grandma always warned them about accepting things from strangers, so even less something that could mess up the family computer was as dumb as a USB drive. That could have anything wrong in it. 2 weeks go by. They would say about 50% of their collection was already gone at this point, and they would feel like they were losing a part of themselves that they never thought they could live without. Though at times, they would do nothing but cry. Nothing more they can do. A testament to how much they were trying to be someone they weren't. At the unspoken stage, even their grandmother didn't want to admit it, so they just kept on selling what remained. But that love still lingered. Considering their lack of friends at the time, they could not concern themselves with something as embarrassing as something they already know as of now. Now, it wasn't until they checked the mail in the apartment's mailbox. It was open. Someone left it open, despite the keyhole insisting it should have been sealed. They reached into the container and saw a yellow envelope. No address delivered back or post. It was as if someone just reached into the mailbox to leave it there, which was impossible considering the key was still in their pocket. And they give the usual bills to their grandmother, but including all but medical, they didn't want to think about the incident, so they were trying to pay it off themselves. And they lodged themselves into the darkness of the room again, sustaining themselves with the necessary nutrients, which was just a Cliff Bar, scrolling through job applications, until they looked over at the yellow envelope again, that they left on the bed. They couldn't be bothered more than they already were, trying to turn over a new leaf without this Sonic craze. So, it wouldn't hurt. Besides, if it was a bomb, then they wouldn't have anything to worry about later. They peeled the seal open with their long nails and pulled out the bubble wrapping, revealing a purple USB drive. They looked into the eBay account, in which they listed the billing in, to contact Tyler again, knowing fully well this was theirs. However, eBay listed the account as unfound. Sick bastard covered his trails and thinks he could get away with it. For a few days, they just left it rotting in their desk drawer, considering they were too busy with finals, but it always lingered in their head. Nothing could anticipate what remained in that file. They weren't willing to risk it, despite how many times they'd been called a moron. Even they knew it was too wrong to be in their possession. They could go over to the police station reporting someone broke into their mailbox, but showing them the key and the USB, if it had anything in there that would go against the law, it could not be liable. They could not be liable. Zero was in pure fear. Not with what's going on right now. Obviously, they didn't pay much mind, but just took to report the USB in 2 hours of their time. A week later, they got a knock on the door. It was a loud banging on a Saturday afternoon. Obviously, they only had their pajamas on, so having to build the courage to open the door was too much. They pleaded their grandma to do so. She groaned but complied, only to find an officer at the door. It was a lean woman wearing her uniform with a plastic baggie in hand. She said, "Please tell your son to stop wasting our time. He left this stupid game at our offices complaining this was a warrant of a virus or something serious. Even the boys down by the home didn't think of this as anything to be taken serious. We have actual things to tend to right now. Some of the words still rang in their ears, but not the ones you would think. Their grandmother apologized and brought them over in bunny slippers to do the same before the officer left. As per usual, they were left with a bantered, long over-explaining lecture regarding how annoying they were. They could have cared less at this point, but at the time they left the kitchen, talking to herself about them. At the end of the day, they did their usual. Zero had nothing in particular, but finally had to get ready for a job interview on Tuesday. Zero felt proud of themselves trying to find something in spite of the day they've been having, but then it reminded them as to why they felt this way. That damn drive. A joke? A big joke? It was just a them? Right. Zero was just the idiot who left it up to the police to handle these things, so of course they'll find it a joke. Fine, Zero thought to themselves. I'll fix it myself. In an almost fit of rage, they slammed the USB right into their PC, just begging for it to be over at this point, but in spite of it, it started downloading something. Zero felt their Adam's apple on their throat grow tense as it grazed on their LED screen. Feeling a sense of regret washed over them, even more considering they had potentially just wasted the only computer they'll own in their life. As long as they're under this roof. But when it downloaded, it showed an icon set of blocks stacked on top of each other, starting from the top of the bottom, reading SVL. Sonic's Virtual Learning, listed underneath on the application. So it really was the same guy who bothered them. Had their account still been up, they could try reporting, but at this point it was a loss, even trying anything. As frustrated as Zero was, they were more intrigued than anything else. The PC wasn't the best at this moment, even behind a whole Windows update, but it managed with the hardware itself being fairly old in retrospect. The game booted up, with the logo of Educayura on the front before their speakers blared with the typical Sega, piercing their ears with something they haven't heard in quite a while. Considering Zero had already sold their Genesis console at this point, it felt refreshing. The app itself began loading as it had started installing more programs into the computer. They started to think, gosh, what was I even thinking? This is quite obviously a virus. Why am I like this? Could I not have been just a son for once in my life and think with a decent brain? Damn it, the loading. Why is it taking so long? I accepted the terms of service without reading anything. Why am I like this? Why? Until Zero stopped panicking and heard a sudden sound. I see! Their heart rushed with anxiety, deciphering their future as they're trying to pay off what was already in the back of their brain. But they heard this squeaky accent speak out of the computer. A warp ring appeared above the clock on their computer screen in the home menu, spinning in motion until Sonic the Hedgehog leaped out of the portal. His look, quite different. All of his tan skin was replaced with a radiant yellow. The cuffs on his gloves and socks were replaced with black, and he wore a red hat spelling out the words Junior. Zero's eyes forced their attention onto the rodent. As the cartoon looked around in their PC, with his hands on his eyes, forming goggles, until his eyes looked right at the player. His pitch-black pupils staring at Zero with glee intent. He pulls out his hands and raises his left to form a greeting hello, in which a Windows tab opened up, listing as Sonic Jr.'s thoughts, appropriately showing a thought bubble in the tab surrounded with a black void. In which case he said, Hola, yo me llamo Sonico Jr. ¿Y tú eres? Underneath was a text box in which they could respond. They pulled out their phone to use Google Translate to uncover his question. For the sake of this telling, they they wrote 0. Que bien, ¿hablas inglés o español? Sonico responds, entiendo, I will talk to you in English to learn Spanish. It sounded like a small child trying his best to form English sentences. 0 found the entire thing quite adorable considering they needed help even understanding. Are you a boy, niño, or girl, niña? 0 looked over to the left and then to the right, answering the correct response. Sonico responds, que bien, that means how good or just good. Mi nombre, my name, is Sonico Jr. 0 giggled at the sight of this little man on the desktop, noticing how much attention they haven't been giving this media in quite a long time. 0 said back, nice to meet you, and Sonico responds, it's great to meet you, 0. Are you ready to play a game with me? 0 responds, yes, in which Sonico Jr. leaps up in joy, in which they jumped over the soundbar. He really was like a virtual pet. Before 0 could respond, a timer began to count down with a sans serif font, starting from 3. Once the countdown was done, they were met with Junior on the left of the screen getting ready, as their PC automatically articulated a stage using other windows open on the screen, all trailed with letters as a replacement for rings, spelling out F-A-M-I-L-I-A, Familia. Once it hit 0, the timer showed up, filling in 10 seconds. 0's fingers were already pressed against the right button and using space to format the word, as each word flew to the top of the screen, jumping on top of each window using them as solid ground. At the end, Sonico reaches out his hands and smiles. Familia! Family! That's what we all are! All of us stutters! It was already 9 in the afternoon. Feeling the weight of school in the morning swept away as they continued playing Virtual Hedgehog. 0 learned that the mouse was in fact more interactable with the character than they thought. Whenever they placed the top of his head and rubbed against his ears, he enjoyed the petting from the mouse. 0 was also able to drag him around the windows, placing him down or above windows, even inside of some browsers. Obviously, it was not compatible with everything, but it was so fun seeing him trying to push images across the screen out of Chrome bar. At 12:34 p.m. after a long day, in order to log Sonico off of the computer, 0 would press on a giant X on the right corner of the screen. Sonico would start to feel drowsy, yawn and tell 0, Buenas noches! Walking right off to the right of the screen. Not to be seen, but assumed to be asleep. Following that, closing the entire SVL window entirely. Before turning off the PC for the night, 0 found a text file on the side of their tabs that loaded as soon as their other applications turned off. They double-clicked it to show a drawing done in Microsoft Paint, utilizing the paint tool to show Sonico Jr. poorly shown on screen, waving at 0 with a smile, on the left saying Buenas noches. This did instill within them some joy as they saved the drawing into a new folder before logging off for the night. A few days passed in which every day they would run in on their challenges for the game while auctioning off all the rest of their Sonic auctions. After this interaction and finding this USB drive, they didn't want to risk anyone seeing them. But even if the game itself could have had something in it, it gave them a sense of comfort they haven't felt since starting their collection. So each night, before they logged off, they would provide a folder for Sonico to leave his drawings in, as if it were a child wanting to show something on the fridge, each one titled with the exact date of 0's progress in Spanish. This went on for a week as they continued their challenges, resulting in them learning some actual Spanish that they didn't think they needed to know. It really helped their exams. By Sunday, it would come into the application just to see Sonico Jr. run around on their computer as they continued to do schoolwork, just leaving him be. Considering Zero was already in a job at this point from the interview, starting Monday. They weren't able to have as much time with Junior as they once had. However, something peculiar happened, as they began looking at their work. At the time, they were doing anatomy, and they really wanted to be a nurse, so they could have their studies solely focus on trying to gain enough so that it was applicable for a scholarship. Zero just wanted enough money. But they were stuck on one of the questions, and they weren't familiar with searching up answers. They needed to truly know. They were following the subject of the heart. One of the questions being, what is the very large veins that bring the oxygenated blood to your heart to get oxygen? The superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. The thought bubble showed up unprovoked. Zero had placed him on the side of a window for a reason, but he answered it by himself. Zero placed in the answer Sonico Jr. gave, in which the answer itself congratulated Zero. Sonico Jr. continued to do nothing but jump up and down from window to window, until Zero was stuck on another question. The left ventricle! Silence fell in the air as they saw him do it one more time, this time in a monotone voice pitch that was filled from the rodent. Zero looked on over to the choices before pressing on the right answer, and they felt their heart drop from their body, sweat pouring in, not from their head to chin. They pressed on. Before they could even read the next question, he answered again. Left atrium. I tried to follow in the answer, but it was already pressed for me. Had I already pressed it on accident? That's what Zero thought, as they didn't pay attention to Junior and their hand was still on the mouse, but perhaps this is part of the treatment process. They pressed on forward. The sinus node! Zero didn't even scroll to the next question, and Zero simply stared at their screen, perplexed by the compelling usage of this artificial hedgehog. Zero looked right at him. It felt like he was trying to pretend he wasn't there, but it felt like it only was playing with Zero, and only Zero. For what, a kick? Does he think I'm too stupid to even try it myself? Zero felt the revelation, and their skin shivered down to their bones. Does he want to play a game with me? Zero said. In an effort to show him where they stood, they quickly dragged their mouse above his head and began lifting him in the air, flying him around the screen, shaking their mouse, dragging it back and forth, watching him dangle on their cursor for dear life. But when Zero was done having their fun, they kind of had a panic attack. Did it just hurt for trying to help them? Why was Zero feeling any remorse for this little critter? Until they could even think about it, they got off the computer for a moment to go to the bathroom, feeling an illness in their stomach creep, guilt. Dinner passed, in which Zero came back to their desk only to find Junior gone, but the X on the right of the SVL program was still there. Hurriedly, Zero searching their folders to try and find Sonico, in which case Zero remembered the drawings folder. It was gone as well. They felt a sudden shock as they looked into the recycling bin, finding the folder inside. However, once they recovered the images from the bin, they heard a sound of sobbing. They looked everywhere in the folders to try and find Sonico, until they accidentally pulled aside the window they were doing their homework on. Zero closes the homework tab and slowly placed their cursor on Sonic's head, caressing him in an effort to comfort him. Until a thought appeared over Sonico. I can't cry. Why? The Sonic cartoon slowly hugged the mouse, feeling the comfort of the white cursor embracing Zero as they continued to pet him. That night, Zero didn't turn the program off. They kept it on at all times to apologize, but most importantly, to monitor him. Something scared Zero, but it seemed like they were more afraid of themselves than anything else at this point. A few minutes later, it was like he was back to his natural, shouting in Spanish Sonic phrases as he played around on the windows. Even during the homework, they wouldn't answer anymore. Zero thought to themselves as to how to make him engage again, remembering how he was able to access only the folders that came from the drawings. Zero placed a multiple choice review in the drawings folder for Sonico to do. The night came in which Zero left him on the entire night, but found a copy of their homework, filling every answer correctly, but showing doodles of the heart on the side of the paper. Sonico was learning. It was a fascinating discovery until Zero reached down to the bottom of the paper, reading a title that had not been seen in their heart for years. Mother. Before Zero could ask Junior, Sonico left the window himself. Nothing entailed right after. Zero felt they grasped the eeriness of the situation. Days followed. They started working over the course of a week, completely forgetting about the boy left on the computer. Zero thought to themselves that they already had done enough. But when they got back home Thursday, with their grandmother already waiting, knocking them on the head with a newspaper, as she pointed right at the computer before leaving. It seemed like Cat was out of the bag at this point, but no harm in having a bit of fun considering the long day Zero's had. Junior was in no means a virus, just a boy. He was just a boy. At that moment before they turned on the monitor, it dawned upon Zero. Zero had left them for a week. Zero had left him to his own thoughts, confided for the sole amusement being all of Zero's files. What could have Sonico learned in that time? Zero felt as though they had left him. They quickly logged into their account, loading in. Nothing of any interest was any different, except the fact that the X on the top right had been clicked. Junior was gone. And it was all Zero's grandmother's fault. Had they done something sooner, they would have known he wouldn't be okay alone. But then they remembered. Every day they would leave a drawing, something to communicate with. Was he generating something more? Dragging their shivering fingers to the folder, they opened images, finding a trailing of more drawings. The following being an image of a boy holding the hands of his father and mother beside a beach. The boy alone on the beach. The boy alone on the beach with his mother. The father on an island alone from the family. But this was where the drawings ended. It was curious considering this was in a peculiar way. 4 days had gone by. Only 3 drawings were shown in the folder. But they saw that there was another modified copy of the heart anatomy homework that they left for Junior. They clicked inside and began reading. He was learning. He began breaking down more and more about the human heart, where the vessels originated from. He was slowly forming out blood as a concept familiar to human survival, inscribing with the paint tool stating, "Is red blood? Do I have blood? Does my heart beat the same as mama?" Questions lingered as he began trying to adapt more of Zero's language from the answers in the document until they scrolled to the end of the file. It was originally an empty blank page meant for filling in your name, but what was found was the identity the same as the one they would have written. Sonico had drawn the entire human circulatory system, articulating by reds and blues, naming each a one, but with the heart missing in the in-depth analysis of the human body. Zero placed the document to the side before booting up SVL one more time, hearing the 2 introductions once more, until they were graded by him on the ground. The monitor had turned into a typical blue screen, but there was no error message, just him in the middle of it. Zero gazed upon the child as Sonico looked right back at him. Zero knew that Sonico was staring right at them because the webcam had turned on. The window popped up of Zero's face right on it, staring right at him. Sonico looked for a moment, incapable of having to witness what was facing him at this very moment. Zero slowly placed her hand on the camera, in which Sonico did the same. His back turned to me on the monitor, but his palm up against mine on the window. What are we? It was another question, the same as the one from the beginning, when he was teaching me Spanish. I knew the answer was spelled out from the beginning. Family. The boy stared at the answer as I typed it in. I wasn't able to input the answer as he was fully capable of just looking at it himself. His reality was comprised of a two-dimensional box. How was the only thing he will and has ever known it is void. It was reckless of me leaving him. But why do I feel sorry? This virus is forcing me to care for a program. It was forcing me to do something that no one had ever done for me. No one had cared to do for me. My fingers shake as I stared right at the camera. I slowly pulled it back before looking down. Junior stared at me in confusion, retyping the answer from family to nothing. Zero thought I had to let go of him. I had to let go of this obsession. I will not be tied from the simple file that believes it is more. Sonico cried. He made those sounds that imitated crying. He was trying so hard to be human. He was trying so hard to be something he wasn't. Something that he could never be. He thinks it's so easy to be someone he isn't. This conclusion resorted to their defiance. I had already set on what I was going to do. Junior saw my realization. He popped another question. Why are we nothing? Zero placed their hands on the keyboard, feeling a shiver down their spine as they stared at the question. He was trying so hard to understand me, to understand what I had lost. Why did he have to mock me? He knows everything about me and he's seen everything in my computer, my photos of my family, my freedom. He saw why I was nothing. In a fit of rage, Zero grabbed the keyboard, slamming it against the PC, pleading for him to get out of as he felt the internal software began to break in itself. Sonico cries began growing louder and louder. His pain was my pain, Zero felt. Something I had to hide for the rest of my life. They pulled the cover of the PC to the internal software and began tearing into it. They smiled. They felt nothing. As Zero lowered the keyboard, a tear ran down their cheek as they felt it. They had killed their boy. They looked down at the monitor. Broken, shattered glass splattered across the floor, trying to find its place. They grabbed it against their chests, crying as they felt no warmth. He was cold. For a month straight, they were no longer permitted to have any activities outside of school and work, trying to pay off the computer so that their grandmother could properly file her medication and taxes, in which they resorted to driving her to the local library. Their chest still hurts sometimes, feeling the cuts of glass against their chests. They tried to lie and say a robber got in, but Grandma knew better than anyone that they weren't okay. She could have called the police, had they just not looked as pathetic as they did. All they had left was their phone to know when to pick her up. Grandma always insisted they were better off at an asylum. But what could I do besides agree with her in silence, Zero thought. It was 9:30 by the time they got back home after a long day at the bank trying to file a loan. Zero leapt to the couch as their grandmother sat beside them, both of them exhausted from the tribulations that came with affording to live. Grandmother looked down at them in pity. "I'll go make some tea," she said. Zero's eyes were too busy staring at the ceiling fan to even acknowledge her. It felt almost draining just listening to any more voices. That was until there was one last sound. a notification from their phone. It was an email. Zero only started using them now due to the adult world they were trying to put themselves in, but this one was quite odd. It was an email to themselves. Zero checked it to see what it had, only shocked that the message itself was sent out to 100+ other accounts. It was so strange until Zero saw it correlated to the student email. All of them. All in Zero's school. The email itself, it was drawn by Junior. It was a husk of a body with only the circulatory system showing, with the reds and blues trailing behind the rest of what he was, what he wanted to be. A man. With the words on the bottom being, "I have no blood." He had logged into Zero's school account, managed to send a message to the virtual world that transcends his own, that he had become something more. He was growing. He was becoming God in a world where no one can hear him scream. But Zero. That was the dramatic telling of Sonico Jr. I hope you all enjoy. I didn't have much planned. I just like reading these stories. If you guys want, I can make a collection of my Sonic stories and put them all in one video. So comment down below if you want that. But besides that, if you guys want me to cover other ASYMs, hey, leave it down below. Makes our lives easier. And yeah, hope you all enjoy. Subscribe and remember, there are no borders.